Hello, my name is Gannin.
My name's Gannin.
There you go, 2 Gannins. And we're Broken City, and this is podcast number 14, correct?
That is correct,
Okay.
yeah. We wanted to start off with like a subject and dig really deeply into it because it's been on our minds lately, and it's something that's very near and dear to our hearts.
I love it.
Which is the subject of improvisation, and how that relates to
Composition.
also known as songwriting or composing or blah 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 blah. So those two things are like very similar. They're in some ways the same thing, depending on how you write music, and it's all about like where ideas come from and then what you do with them. You know, like you can sit around and improvise and then find something you like, and that becomes the beginning of your composition, and then you build on that, and you're really slowing down the improvisation process to the point where you're now composing and you're being very choosy with what you do, where improvisation is more like you're in the moment and stuff is coming out and you're reacting to it, and once it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
Unless, of course, you decide to punch in, or
Right.
unless you are recording. But
Right.
speaking from kind of the purest side of both forms, one is I'm composing something to be performed or recorded or even just written down. And the other side is you're in a live situation, this would be the extreme, and you're reacting to the musicians around you and
the audience.
And the audience,
The
and to
room.
your own emotions. And
Sure.
so it's interesting because we both have fairly unique relationships to both composing and improvisation. But you, since you have a background in jazz, I'm curious to see like what you would say about improvisation from your point of view, because from the time you were a teenager, you were really deeply entrenched in playing jazz with people, you know, some amazing jazz players that were, you know, double your age and were really not going to let bad playing slide. So
You used to get schooled nightly.
Yeah. So that was, you know, what, early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s. I mean, the first part of my journey with music started with rock. So my first way into improvisation was rock and blues. You know, like Jimi Hendrix and all those guys, like Eddie Van Halen, the more sophisticated kind of rock stuff. And then I heard Jeff Beck, and that's what really sparked the interest of getting into jazz. He was kind of like the conduit into jazz music. It was like I heard that and I was like, what is that? There's no vocals, that's cool. Like he's playing in a more free-form melodic style. It's not like as rigid, it's not so blues-based. And it's very melodic, but it's also, you could tell that there was some jazz qualities to it. And then the next thing that happened was I saw George Benson on the Johnny Carson show.
Wow. And
he was just ripping it up, and I was like, I want to know what that is.
Hashtag old.
But when I saw that, I was like, I want to know what that is, because that's cool. I was searching for something, because I've been listening to all this rock music and some fusion stuff, but I was searching for that kind of like entry to jazz, and nothing was really turning me on. But when I saw that, I was like, I really like that, and I want to know how he did that. And then that kind of led to more crazy fusion stuff like Alan Holzit and John McLaughlin, Pat Metheny. Pat Metheny was probably my biggest influence on the guitar in jazz.
Yeah.
And so I had to go step by step. You know, like with blues and rock music, it was based on the pentatonic scale. So the language and the words and all that stuff was just all based around that scale.
So pentatonic, to sort of, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, or I've heard the term, but it's a little blurry, or you know the band the Pentatonics and you think that's just a band name, whichever view you are, penta means 5, tonic is obviously the root note, so you have a 5-note scale. Most scales are, you know, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
So if you're in C and you want to play a minor pentatonic, you play C, there's your root, E flat, which is a flat third, F, the 4th, G, the 5th, B flat, and that's the flat 7. That's what makes up the minor.
2, 3, 4, 5, and then tonic again.
That's your root.
Pentatonic.
And then, I mean, it's such the scale is so like.
It's all over that.
I mean, pretty much all pop music and all R&B and all rock is based on that scale. I mean, there are people that take it outside of that, of course, but that's like that's the roots. That's like that's where it all comes from. And so once I learned that, then when I got into jazz, then I had to like get way more in scales. You know, I had to learn like the modes. You know, I had to learn melodic minor scale, chromaticism. It got way more advanced quickly.
So the purpose of that, just to bring it back to improvisation, like he's talking about the pentatonic scale and taking it further, in a way, as we were talking about today at lunch, that's kind of what sparked this whole conversation. It was like a conversation at lunch, and we were like, ooh, let's throw that on the podcast. Which is like, how much improvisation is rooted in like, it's very much like a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's either a conversation you're sort of having schizophrenically with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
like you're reaching into your tool bag and playing something and then responding to yourself or the musicians around you. And so one of the kind of rule number one with improvisation, especially in an interactive environment, like more of a jazz environment, but any environment really,
Even rock too.
is like you never want to parrot somebody. Like, probably want a cracker, probably want a cracker. You know, like, just be a stupid bird.
Yeah.
Just like in life, you don't have a conversation by going like, hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you? I'm the dummy. No, you're the dummy.
So like that's like the equivalent of me going like, so that can be cool.
You know why that usually happens is when a young musician thinks that they're listening.
Right.
And they go, I'm listening. I heard that.
Yeah, and it can be fun and it can be musical. There are no rules, but
you can do it.
Obviously, if you do that all night, or if that's your go-to thing, like I
super
improvise,
annoying.
It can get super annoying, and it is hi, how are you, hi, how are you. So it's really more like shaka-da-ga-da-ga-da.
Oh, sorry, do it again. I wasn't ready.
Da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da.
I might expand on it.
Yeah.
Like I might take. Here's the thing. That's a good point. You might take a little bit of that and start off with that, but expand on it. It's like it is a rolling conversation. You're building upon it as you do it.
Right. I mean, a good example is you would never say hi, how are you, hi, how are you, but you might say I love you too because of this. Like,
yeah, that's actually a great example of that.
It's a conversation. So to take that back to what we were talking about earlier, when you're learning your scales, you're basically learning how to put words together and form sentences, and it's the grammar of music. So like, where does the noun go? Where does the adjective go? Where does the period go? And is there an exclamation point? Where does the paragraph end? You're building these tools that you can reach into so that you can talk.
And going back to like composition, let's take the pop medium. You know, it's like pop music. If you know, the thing that I find cool is that if you know these extra scales and you know like how certain notes and intervals sound over a chord, that can really help your pop writing or your rock writing or your acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, because you're thinking outside of the norm. It's like you're hitting things that are, whoa, what's that? That was cool. It's the unexpected. It's like the more you know, the more you can grab from, the more unexpected it can be and cool.
Right.
You know, I find that being able to play jazz frees me up to think broader when it comes to melodies, you know. But then it's also can be very hurtful too, because it can make you too complicated. It's like you're always battling that fine line between communication and self-serving.
Yeah, it's like it's good taste, you know, like are you having a conversation at Thanksgiving and mom and grandma are around? Okay, then maybe there's less swearing involved. Right. You know what I mean? Maybe you're watching what you say a little bit or whatever it is. Or are you having a conversation with your buddies? You know, like, so context is everything. Like, is it a jazz context? Is it a pop context? Right. That changes the words that you have available to you.
Sure.
And you know, like if you're laying down like a fat funk groove, and the improvisation tools you start to use are all, you know, fusion or jazz or something, like that can be appropriate under certain circumstances, but under others it can be just the most annoying thing ever.
Right.
It's like
it can be distracting.
Yeah, why is the guitar player going like while I'm trying to sing, or you know, whatever.
Right,
so
exactly.
Understanding context is everything with improvisation.
Yeah, the backdrop has a lot to do with how you react to it.
Yeah.
You know, like Miles Davis was doing what you were saying, like I've been listening to his autobiography and checking out a bunch of his stuff, and in the 70s he was doing a lot of like funk stuff, where he'd have the band playing really funky but kind of keeping it just one thing, and he'd be the guy that went out on top. But he had discussed that. Like he said, you guys are going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Right. And that's how it's going to get done.
Totally.
And so he kind of created the landscape in which to improvise on. And that's kind of like, you can go about it so many different ways, but that's kind of a cool way to begin a concept. You kind of design what you want it to be, and then you work above it.
Totally, the blues are very similar. Like, he kind of created his own sort of, what would you call it, like a structure to work within, and the blues are a structure, you know, like a 1-4-5. So, I mean, and then within that, there are lots of improvisational tools that one can use. You know, you have everything musical at your disposal. So, like, we can kind of demonstrate some of that stuff between the two of us.
Yeah, actually, that's be cool to do 2 different versions. Like, I'll do one version that's very like blues, you know.
Okay.
I'm not gonna go out. And I'll do one that's more jazzy, and you can see the differences between the 2 styles.
Okay.
So, what key are you gonna be in C?
Oh, C minor. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. More jazzy. So, obviously, that was pretty obvious, drastic, different styles, you know. And there was no right, I can't say that, right way to do that. It was like the way in which you chose to go.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you brought into the jazz thing was like chromaticism,
Time fluctuations, like changing the way you approach a note. You know, the other thing too that doesn't get talked a lot about is dynamics too. Like the way you approach a note. You can really change the way the note sounds by just adding some dynamics.
Yeah, and that's both hands. That's in both hands.
Yeah, there's lots going on in here. It's funny, I don't ever think about the left hand. There's so much going on in the left hand that you just don't even think about, but you're doing all the time, muting and vibrato and bending and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
the same goes for drumming. I mean, there's the world of touch. You know, you're talking about touch on a guitar, so like, you know, how your left hand plays into it, how much skin is on the fretboard and on there, how hard you're pushing, what you're doing with that, whether you're playing with your pick or your fingers, how you're holding the pick, all of the angle of the pick on the string, all those different things. And the same goes with drumming. Like, are you playing, you know, on the drum or kind of off the drum, or are you playing really into the drum? Are you, you know, choking the stick on purpose so that you get a more stiff and solid sound, or are you letting the stick breathe and become a part of how the drum rings? Because you know, if you all drummers know, if you click a stick and look and hear the pitch of it, there's a pitch there. That if your grip is loose and you're hitting the drum and getting a very open sound, that brings off one kind of attitude and one sort of feeling from it. But if you hold the stick and grip it tight right upon impact, you're choking the stick and getting the drum to speak in a certain way. And there's all kinds of nuances in there, which I actually want to do like a special little drum lesson just on that later for YouTube. But all those things play into how that's sort of, I would consider those things in the toolbox of improvisation. Those things are like subtext. It's like the difference between, let's use the I love you thing again. Like, I'm going to tell you I love you, Gannin. But if I just went like, love you, that's different than I love you. That gets a little weird, you know. Now you think, one sounds like love you, bro. One sounds like, no, I'm in love with you.
That's when you run out of the room.
Very different context, very different subtext. So that's what we can do with those nuances of touch on our instruments. You could play the same exact rhythm at the same, you know, same exact melody on the same drums, etc. How you hold the stick, how you approach the drum, both dynamically and in terms of touch.
Yeah. It's
Completely
amazing
different,
if you think about it.
completely different subtext.
The nuances are insane. Like,
Yeah.
the little things you can do to kind of, what that does too is it also creates your style.
Mm-hmm.
Because those little nuances are what separates you from every other guitar player or every other drummer.
And that's when the choices you make for those subtexts, are you thinking like, ooh, this person plays like this, I'm gonna do that? Or are you making personal decisions
Mm-hmm.
about like what you want to say? Like that's what separates the copycat from the artist, you know, like,
Mhm.
you know, why? It's all in like, why are you making those decisions?
Right.
And that's really everything, and that's what you said, like that's where that's how your voice comes out and how you define what you do is like the authenticity in those choices.
Totally.
Let's maybe break it down even further and go to like,
Oh, one more thing to expand on what you're saying.
yeah,
When it comes to the language and the tools and all that stuff. One thing that I think a lot of people, mainly on piano, guitar, and any kind of instrument that you can play notes, is they don't think about what notes they're playing. They just do the mechanics of it. So I see a lot of guys going like this, not thinking anything about what that actually is, other than it's a mechanical exercise. I play with my hands and I kind of know what it does.
right.
You have to really know what those notes sound like. Know when you're playing things, you should be able to hear them a little bit before you play them. You're not gonna be able to hear everything you play because, I mean, some guys can. Some guys are really that attached to their notes. I can hear a majority of it. There's sometimes I like to surprise myself. So I might play something weird and go, oh wow, I didn't think that was gonna sound like that. It might be awful, it might be cool, but
Right.
really know the notes when you're playing them. Like if you're playing a scale, you should know what those notes sound like when you're playing a scale. So when you start mixing and matching them and doing different intervals and stuff, then it's not a surprise to you what it's going to sound like.
Yeah,
It's
in the
being
context of the
connected.
chord.
Yeah, especially in context. Yeah. If you're playing C minor, I should know what all of those things sound like in C minor. I should know what the 9 sounds like, the 13, 11. It's like those are color tones, but I know what they're going to do to the chord when I play them.
Yeah, and if I give you this instead of, if I give you like,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can change things on me too, and I should be able to use my ears and just figure it out. Get more drastic with it. I knew that.
so you heard the major third, obviously, and
Yeah.
so you grabbed onto that, changed scales. So, I mean, you can go,
Took me a minute to find that one, because that's like a
so you reach for it.
little more Spanish sounding.
Yeah,
I like that one.
so that implies actually implies like the major fourth.
Yeah, and the one thing I used to do in improv too is that I would sit, if you don't mind playing that chord again, I would play everything on one string, so I wasn't attached to the scale.
You want the weird chord?
Yeah, let's do that one. Fine.
I'll go between like an A minor and that A.
Yeah, and I'll just use the E string. This is really good for training your ears to be able to move with something once you hear it. You're reacting to everything. So let's try it. That's all on one string. I took a little out. I added an E, which is not in the chord. A major third, so I was like,
Yeah.
Now do it again, but change all the chords. Make it really crazy.
Okay,
And see if my ears can keep. I'm going to make mistakes when I do this, but I'm going to see if I can follow it.
cool. Start on the same.
Yeah, just
C
start
minor.
there and then you can go bonkers. Whoops. couple mistakes in there. But I was really trying to just hear, react to the chord, and being fearless, because I know I'm going to screw up, because I don't know exactly what we're going to play. If you don't know what's happening, who knows?
Yeah.
Your ears should be able to tell you when to react. And I was trying to keep a fluid, sort of melodic thing going, because I didn't know where anything was going to go. So, but I like that. Yeah, and you're just improvising too, so two guys are like pushing and pulling.
And I'm trying to I'm sort of letting my next choice be a surprise to me, and then using the logic of what I know about different keys and stuff to just sort of give you something that's completely not
what you expect, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not unsensical. There's a little bit of logic to changing these keys and then giving you the sudden major.
Yeah. Those are great exercises, though. You can allow yourself to spend 15 minutes a day doing things like that. Your ear training and all that stuff will improve so fast.
Yeah, because, you know, allowing yourself to make mistakes when you're practicing is like the key to breaking new ground. If you're not pushing yourself in that way, then you're just going to stay in the box you're in.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time for the gig, it's time to play, you know, it's time to be inside the moment, which is to be inside what you know and to let things come out of you. So, and that's when listening is the most important. If you go on the gig and it still feels like you're practicing, that's when the evil trick of playing the licks or getting stuck in the idea of playing licks can really trick you, because that's like going into a conversation and going like, so dude, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, like, you don't just say the ABCs in a conversation, and that's really like, when you start really just playing licks on whatever instrument, you're kind of just...
You're just playing the ABCs.
You're just playing the ABCs.
And the licks are cool. I mean, they should be springboards for other things.
Yeah.
You
They're jumping off points,
everybody plays licks.
Everybody plays licks. And
there could be your own licks, or there could be somebody
just
else.
like everybody says, hey, what's up, man? Or hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
It's like it's part of the vocabulary of conversating.
Right. But it's when you play the licks just to play licks and trying to impress the crowd or trying to impress your buddies, that's when it's bad.
Yeah, it's the reason, it's the why behind it again. Going back to that core of like, why are you playing that lick? Because it's the right thing to play, or it's just for some other weird reason.
My girlfriend's in the audience, I want to impress her. I mean, people do that.
Yeah, totally.
Girls are in the audience, or whatever, whoever, if you're a female, there's a guy in the audience, whatever it is, you tend to play to your surroundings. So if you want to impress somebody, you tend to be flashy, not thinking about what's going on around. That usually happens when you're young. When you're a young musician, you tend to like let your surroundings dictate what you play.
Or a moment of weakness. We've all been guilty of it, but it's like,
I've been yelled at for it. I used to play with a lot of older musicians, and you know, when they thought I was screwing around, they'd tell you at the end of the gig, man, you're screwing around, you're not playing music. And it hurt, and I'd be like, ugh, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Totally.
But I'd go home and think about it and go, next we're going to show him. And you know what? It upped my game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like next week I didn't play that way. I played different.
Yeah.
And I played more musical. And they were right. If you allow people that are older to you to give you wisdom, it's beneficial. It's not, I mean, unless they're just total dummies, you know. Mm-hmm. But most people that have experience, that have done things, you should take that to heart. Because they're teaching you something. Mentorship. It's a lost art form these days. We talk about that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a mentor, you had mentors. It's like you need somebody to kind of, they're at a different plateau than you are. And let that wisdom seep in and learn from it. Don't fight it. It's not to say you can't have your own ideas. You can. You know.
No, everybody's different. Like, I mean, the classic thing too with just, you know, what we're doing with Broken City Artists is starting to have a mentorship program, and everybody's different. So like, it's very common that it's like the teacher is learning. If they're teaching right, they're learning too, because not only are you going back through fundamentals and remembering what you may have forgotten, but you know, a different human being is going to bring different things to the table and teach you. And there's a concept called spiral dynamics that is really about what it is to kind of grow up and expand your knowledge and learn things through experience and all that stuff. And that's kind of what the art and the historical kind of bolstering of mentorship is really rooted in the fact that older people know something that younger people don't know, or people with more experience. It doesn't even have to do with age necessarily.
Sure.
Somebody who's 20 could mentor somebody who's 30 if they
Yeah.
have more experience. So it's not about age as much as experience, but often comes with age. But what spiral dynamics is kind of about is like, it's almost like having, you know, somebody in a lookout point, you know, like if you have like your little castle or something,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you have that person that's up at a higher elevation because they can see what's coming. So if the enemy's coming up, or, you know,
Yeah.
they're up at a higher elevation. And it's cool to think about mentorship in that sense of like,
Yeah, they're trying to help you prevent yourself from making bad decisions or
yeah, and they're
falling into pitfalls and all that kind of stuff.
they're at a perspective that's oh, I can see a little bit more of this area, you know, and give, you know, somebody who's down at in an earlier stage, who's seen a little bit less, you know, just seeing kind of like, you know, 100 yards in front of you, and the guy on a higher level of this spiral dynamics thing is like can see for miles, you know.
Right.
That's kind of what it is. It's just
Mm-hmm.
sort of like it's perspective, it's experience, and especially with improvisation and composition, you know.
Yeah.
That's really valuable stuff because you kind of
Sure.
you figure out what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, it's like don't get rid of the confidence, but let go of the ego a bit.
Yeah.
You know, be humble enough to accept information. May not always be what you want to do, and then you can decipher that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there's always something to be learned from somebody. You know, we're living in an awesome time where you can get on YouTube and you can find information like that. I learn things all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that. I mean, I'm always in the quest for new ideas and new pieces of information, and I think that keeps you growing as an artist, as a musician. It's like you always want to be moving forward.
Yeah, and the cool thing to keep in mind is that we have access to near infinite information.
Mm-hmm.
But what's harder to have access to is to have a good attitude about what the information is and why it exists, you know. And that's something I know that we're both really passionate about, and in my case too, is like really getting underneath, you know, the why behind the information. You know, it's like, why is that person playing that way? What are the musical and personal reasons for playing that groove over that song,
Choices,
or
yeah.
whatever it is? Yeah, these choices, as opposed to just taking the surface level and taking the notes and copying them or whatever. It's just really getting inside of it, and that's what's hard about. That's the downside, I would say, to YouTube, is that it's all take.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a little bit less give and take and sort of personalized stuff going on, and it can, that's where the magic happens. Is really making something personal.
It's true.
So let's talk about, this is always interesting to me because I've always loved about your playing your ability to sort of take things in and out harmonically and rhythmically, and the ability to be free, which is really, I see it as like a direct expression of your personality. Like your sense of humor and just what you're like is very sometimes off the wall. And you can see our Instagram.
They give karate lessons too.
Yeah, no. And so let's give a couple examples in that same sort of thing of what it's like to be sort of inside the rails, I guess you'd say. So all, you know, things that could be written down. Here's the notes, here's the rhythms. And so everything kind of in there.
Yeah, like you can transcribe it and make total sense.
Yeah, what you see is what you get.
Okay.
You want some of that Latin again?
Yeah, that's fine. So it was all very much. If you knew where things were going to go, might have been a couple surprises, maybe.
All 8 notes and 16 notes.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about improvisation and just being a little free is you can stretch the rhythms and you can stretch the notes. So you have the gray areas between rhythms and the gray areas between notes. So bending the time and bending the pitch.
Okay.
So here's
Same thing, but different.
3.
They're getting fancier at the end, but you know. A lot of that was like bending the time, falling downstairs, and then chromatic stuff.
So as you're doing that, what are you pulling from?
Some of that's pattern based because you're playing a pattern of chromaticism, but I'm looking for stuff that's angular, that sweeps in and out. So if I'm playing chromatic stuff, it's because I know what it's going to sound like, but I want it to feel like a snake kind of just going, you know. And then the rhythmic stuff just makes it more interesting to just sort of lay back and pull ahead and make it feel like it's sort of, you're just floating, you know, as opposed to you're floating, as opposed to very rhythmic stuff, which I like too. I like all of it. You should be able to take all those colors in a solo and just make it happen somewhere, you know, like be able to take all that stuff and do something with it, you know.
That's cool. I mean, without even really, obviously you didn't know I was going to ask you that question, but you talked about a snake and you talked about floating, very visual things.
Yeah. I don't see it as notes so much. I mean, I do. It's this stuff, not so much. Like if you play accordion, like anything that's very chromatic isn't really about notes. It's about rhythm and tension and release. There's the release. Like I like it's chaos, and then all of a sudden it's a release. That's why I love chromaticism, because it puts you in this world of like your world's upside down for a minute, and then you bring it back real melodic.
And you get to speak the language of. You're almost like throwing out the language of the key center.
Yeah, totally.
And you're just saying like, I'm going to speak in another language, which is sort of like being nonsensical in a way. You know,
triads are really, play that again, triads are really cool too for, if you want to learn how to play outside the key a little bit, like in jazz they always talk about playing outside, which means you're just basically, like you said, bending the key center. You're playing outside of the key center. If we're in C minor, if I play a B over C minor, it's going to be weird, it's going to sound ugly. But you use it as a tension release, you know. So that's talking about triads. So triads are cool if you want to play out. They're such strong sounding things. Like a triad is a 3-note chord. So you have a C, E, what is that? G, C. It's a C major triad, right? C minor triad. So play that again. If I play just random triads, it's such a powerful sound that it sounds cool as long as you land back in the key.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to play triads. See? It's like all I'm doing is just playing triads, but there's such a strong tonality to those.
Yeah.
That when I take it back in, you're like, oh, that was crazy, I was out of control, but then I came right back into ground zero. So those kind of little methods, like the chromaticism and the triads, and here another thing too is you can play a pentatonic up a half step to take it out and then bring it back in. This is a real common trick, but see, I took it way out. It's all how you come back in. You can play any note you want as long as you come back in and it's strong.
Given the context.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to play that in like a bar mitzvah or something like that, but you know. But in the right context, it can be super cool and unique and interesting, you know.
Yeah.
It can even take anybody's playing in a rock context somewhere else, you know. When I was playing with Taylor Hawkins, he loved that. He loved that I would take things out. I wouldn't just play rock and roll licks, which I know how to play and I like a lot. But I like to try to take it more adventurous.
Yeah, so, I mean, Vinny Colaiuta is a great example on the drum side of somebody who knows how to stretch the time.
Yeah, brilliant.
If you want to hear some of that, there's an Alan Holdsworth record called Secrets with Vinny Colaiuta all over it. And in particular, there's a fill that he does where he basically is so solid on the time that he takes 16th notes speeds them up, slows them down, and then ends up at triplets.
Right.
So he's like, it's
really cool.
So
is that called metric modulation?
now metric modulation is more taking like a slice of a rhythm, and then, like for example, if you're here and you take the dotted eighth, da 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 da.
Oh, that's metric modulation.
Da 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 da.
Okay, yeah.
We actually were doing it the other night at the art bar.
Right.
Quite a bit between the two of us. And that's interesting. I mean, you were like, what is it? But you do it. You know what
Right.
it is.
I know what it sounds like, but I've always been fuzzy about what exactly metric modulation is.
Yeah, it's just a name for something.
So what Vinny did was more just taking... What
he was just sort of... The fill was... The tempo was here. So I think it was... He went from... it was actually 30-second notes to... the triplets.
Yeah.
It was a...
Yeah.
And just sort of like stretching it out, pulling it.
But what was cool about him, and we were talking about at lunch, is that a lot of drummers try to do this stuff, and they end up sounding like they don't know what they're doing because they don't have the center of time. It's like their time feel is not strong enough to pull off something so out there and unique that when they come back in, it just sounds like a cluster, you know what, it's like a disaster. Like Vinny's time is so like, he knows where the pulse is, he's so confident where one is that when he does something crazy, it comes back in and it feels right.
Yeah, a lot of it's trust. I mean, you can trust when Benny's going to do it.
Yeah.
It was a really funny example of that. I was playing with guys that had a history of playing with Benny, and it was you were on the gig.
Oh yeah, the Mark Stevens was good, yeah.
Yeah, so it was Mark Stevens, Melvin Davis, you, Walt Fowler,
great players,
Steve Tavallone.
Walt Fowler, and then Steve Tavallone, who's awesome. All really strong musicians.
At the Baked Potato, which is sort of this very well-known jazz club in Studio City.
Legendary, yeah.
Yeah. And I was a young buck. What was I, 22 or something maybe?
Yeah, probably.
21. And there was a song in 7 that had this, it was in 7/8 and had this weird pattern. There's a drum solo in it. And I had, in preparation for this gig, I had like programmed that riff into a drum machine or into a sequencer. And was practicing it to it and going like, all right, I got a solo with this gig. I think Simon Phillips had done the gig.
Yeah, I did it months before it was Simon Phillips.
A couple months before it was Simon Phillips, and then I got on the gig. And the gig was going great, and this song comes around, here comes the vamp. And I jumped into a metric modulation. It was actually around a dotted eighth thing, and I used that as the new time, but it was in 7, so it was like, I don't know what the tempo was, like, over 7, and I used that as a tempo, so I was like, and went and like, since I'm not Vinny, clearly, like, everybody was like, holy crap, he just lost his mind. So then everybody was like, I don't know what just happened.
Yeah.
And since Vinny wasn't back there, like, giving the old, like, everything's going to be fine, guys, just stick to it.
Yeah.
Everything started falling apart.
They got scared.
And then I got scared because I'm like, okay, now I got to follow somebody because they think I went nuts. Now everybody's lost it. So here's an example of context. It was like, first time on the gig, maybe don't do that.
Right.
Maybe I need to sort of maybe
ease them into that.
Prove that maybe that was, they didn't see that coming from me.
Yeah, right.
And then when it did come, you know, whatever happened was just not right. So
that's funny.
Yeah. Do you even remember that?
I don't, but that sounds amazing.
You probably blocked it out.
I wish I could remember that.
Like
That sounds really fun.
memory. That was insanity.
I can see it happening, but I can almost see that moment in my eye, like in my mind's eye. It's going down, but I can't totally hear it.
And what was crazy about it too is I remember just play fast single strokes.
That'll get me out of this quick.
Yeah. I was like, all right, make a lot of noise.
Well, you bring up a good point though. It's funny because with playing, because I play with a lot of different drummers, and the one thing you have to get used to each other.
Yeah.
There's a sort of a feeling out period, no matter what the gig is. Like I did a gig with Simon Phillips and Jeff Berlin, and it was an amazing gig. And it's like two guys you didn't think that would be good together, like Simon and Jeff Berlin. Jeff Berlin's an amazing, accomplished, chopsy bass player, and he plays a cool groove, but he's mainly known for his solo.
That's on YouTube if you want to check it out. Open up a new window.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Berlin, Simon Phillips, Gannin, Arnold.
Super great gig. It was in Chicago. We didn't rehearse. I got to the gig. Simon and I, Jeff was late. I got together with Simon first. We went through all the songs together, just him and I. And we were like, this is going to work. It was awesome. Like, we were having a great time. Simon was I was a huge fan of his because he played on my favorite Jeff Beck records. Like, I couldn't wait to play with him. And I'd played with him prior to that, but this was the first time under my own name that I'd hired the guy, you know. And then Jeff
So he was your guy.
This was my band that I put together, like my trio. Yeah.
Okay.
No, not all my music. A couple of my songs, but mainly songs that everybody would kind of know. I didn't want to go too crazy.
Okay.
But some were very difficult. There was a song called Actual Proof by Herbie Hancock that's really hard. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can get totally turned around quick. But we nailed it. But then Jeff Berlin came in, and it was like, we took a minute. Like, him and I were playing, and it's like, we have a thing. And then Jeff came in, and he has a different feel, and everybody has a different feel. And when the show came up, it was magic. Like, I don't know what had happened.
So all that
like,
tension. And
all the tension and, like, you know, those moments of like, what's going on? We never played together before. This could be nuts or it could be a disaster, you know. It actually turned out to be great. And that's one of my cool favorite moments in time when I could remember, like, you didn't know what to expect, when it happened, it felt like magic and everybody felt it.
And probably, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of experienced musicians on stage. But
sure.
In a situation like that, I can imagine that everybody's, first of all, doesn't want to be the one screwing up. So
everybody's very alert.
Everybody's listening.
Yeah, everybody's
and that's
listening.
the key to all of it. Is like,
that was a good example of listening.
Yeah, because you had to.
I remember we were doing that song Stratus, which is there's a vamp that Simon solos on, and it's like do 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 do. Oh, and he started soloing, and I was playing that groove, and I started crapping my pants. I'm like, oh my god, I'm playing this, but he's playing crazy around it. What do I do? And I just kept playing it over and over. You could see me like just tapping for dear life.
He was watching
just
your
tapping, and then we did it. We got through it, but I could definitely hear. I was starting to like drift a little bit because I was trying to pay attention too much to what he was doing.
Well, here's the thing about Simon too, is that he's one of the few drummers that actually does play outside the time. Like he does these.
He does a lot of metric modulation stuff.
He does, but he does things where he's slowing up, speeding up, and slowing down.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of doing sometimes he's doing it in a grid, and other times you can tell that he's just like he's painting a picture.
Yeah.
And then he's just feeling where the groove is and he lands.
Yes.
I can't imagine playing a riff over him doing that.
Yeah, because he's trusting us at that time. Because it's funny when the drummer gives up the responsibility of playing the groove, you're playing the groove.
Yeah.
And that's when musicians can fall apart. Because like I did a DVD as well, and we did the same song on the DVD, and the same thing happened. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm just going to play my own thing.
Yeah.
And I did the same exact thing. We actually.
Maybe he did the same exact thing.
Yeah, I guess we both did the same thing. Like I started listening to. The mistake was, and this is going to sound totally against what we've been talking about for the last hour, but my goal was not to listen to him. My goal was to keep the time.
Because you kind of assumed that he was listening to you.
Exactly. I'm a robot. He's feeding off of me. He's hoping that my riff is steady. So the minute I start hearing him, if he goes somewhere, like you said, if he moves the time, and I go with him, that's when the whole house of cards just goes.
Right. The trust goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, it's funny, so we had that experience with him, and then I played with Terry Bozzio on a different day, and it was completely different. Like, he was a totally different drummer. We had never played together, and it was like, he was super artistic, quieter than Simon, so it was not quite as loud, but it took a minute for everybody to kind of, I remember we were all nervous. And I mean, I can't speak for Terry. I think he said he was a little like, I don't think he was nervous about us. I think he was nervous about how's this going to work.
Yeah, first time on camera with people. Like.
It's a very high pressure situation. It's like you're this is it. You got to film this, and you're also on a video with other famous drummers.
Yeah.
So you have to deliver the goods in a certain way where it's like, oh wow, it's like that's Terry and that's Simon and that's like.
Yeah.
So I think the pressure of that was definitely in the room.
Where can, if people are interested in checking that out?
You can get it, I think, on Amazon for sure. And you used to be able to get a Guitar Center, but I don't think they sell it there. It's called Gannin Arnold World Class, or 5 World Class Drummers. But it has Taylor Hawkins, Jimmy Chamberlin, Gary Novak, Simon Phillips, and Terry Bozzio. And
it's on the drum channel as well.
It's on Drum Channel, yeah.
Drum channel.
That was a great experience, and that was a lesson in learning how to play with different people quickly. I played with Taylor. What's that?
Sorry to interrupt, but the concept of the project was these 5 different drummers give you their perspective on the same song.
Right. We all played the same song. It was called Not From Here. So everybody had to play that song in their way, which is cool because they all played it different. Like Taylor played it really rock and very I won't say stiff, but just the way he plays.
Just balls to the wall, yeah.
Yeah, balls to the wall, bam. Jimmy was he was awesome because he played it in a jazzier, he was the original guy on the record, but he did a jazzier kind of feel to it, and it was that felt great.
Yeah.
Simon did an awesome version. I mean, it was cool because they all had their twist on it. And that was a cool concept because it was cool for other drummers to see what's it like when 5 different guys play on the same song, how do they approach it. And I think they all listened to Jimmy Chamberlin's version.
Oh, really?
So there was a context.
Because you had a recording.
I had a recording, so I gave them the recording. So they are all aware of what it had sound like, which I kind of wish, in retrospect, I wish that there was no backdrop to it, like there was no drumming. I kind of wish that they all would have not heard Jimmy.
Yeah.
But then again, maybe them hearing Jimmy made them react in a sort of well, I got to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I think it might have been good.
For sure.
Might have been beneficial.
Well, either way, the results you got would have been different either way. I think so because.
Well, then they would have had their own artistic stamp. Who knows what kind of groove they would have played?
Yeah.
Once you have a context of what the groove is, then it's hard to kind of break. I mean, unless you're just a really ballsy, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want guy. And people do that. They'll say, Terry Bozzio played it kind of like Jimmy Chamberlin, but he did a lot of stuff, with his really dry crashes and cymbals and stuff. And then Simon he had a really big sound. He's just got a big sound in general. Mm-hmm. Like the way he plays is very open and big. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
But it was cool. But that's when you're playing with that many different musicians, you definitely have to listen. Because if you don't listen, it's a train wreck, and you're being filmed, so it's a horrible train wreck.
Right.
People are spending money on this train wreck. So if it goes wrong, you're screwed.
So, first of all, where did the phrase "balls to the wall" come from? I don't like to picture that.
Well,
anyways,
there's a band called Accept that had a song called "You Get Your Balls to the Wall, Man." So there you go. I don't know if they invented it, but it definitely existed.
I highly doubt it.
They did not invent that.
I don't think anybody invented balls.
But there were also a bunch of German guys with their shirts off on the album cover, and that scared me in itself.
I'm in. So,
German rock.
What I want to talk about in improvisation is motif building, because this is where composition meets improvisation. I think in a very finite way, something that's easy to grasp,
right? And
also very important to both worlds, and very
especially
important to songwriting and one of the most, to give you a definition of what a motif is, probably one of the most famous ones in history is da 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 da. That's a little motif.
Yeah.
It's a little musical phrase that you can capture onto and build upon. So there's rhythmic motifs, there's harmonic and melodic motifs, there's all different kinds. And so one of the cool things about it is it really is like a conversation that sort of circles back on itself and continues to expand and keep going and expanding outward, upward, wherever you want.
Sure.
So give us an example over that same thing of rhythmic motif building.
Yeah, rhythmic and melodic. I'll try to do both at the same time. The one thing too is that I took lessons from this guy Scott Henderson, who's a great guitarist, brilliant guitarist, and he taught me phrasing. I didn't know what it was. I was just playing guitar. I knew stuff and I knew how to play decent. But he told me what you're doing with phrase. He broke it down to an understandable thing to me. Phrasing is you're basically, like you said, having a conversation with yourself. I mean, that was a great example. It's you're playing off of yourself, but you're taking an idea and taking it to its fullest extent before you let off and come up with a new idea. So you don't want to just like I said, you don't play one thought and then go to another random thought. you got to take in consideration of it's musical to like take things. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can be weird and go crazy and go do that, but just from the basic fundamentals, it's like it's good. Well, I'll just do it. I'll just take an idea and take it as far as I can go with it.
Yep. And when you talk about taking an idea and going far, you can take something that's kind of an intellectual idea and then expand on it intellectually and expand on it emotionally. So we'll do that in both directions.
Okay.
I'll do it like kind of as a drummer, and then we'll start with you doing it as a guitar player.
So let me think about what. Well, I'll just play.
Yeah,
Let's
man.
come up with a motif. Whoops. Let's start it over. I didn't know I was going that chord.
Sorry.
My fault. That's
yeah,
all right.
what progression do you want?
No, that's good. I like that progression. Okay, so real quick, first thing I did, like what we were talking, da, 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 I took a real small rhythmic motif. That was like the first thing I played. So right there, I'm changing, messing around with the rhythms. I've got a melodic shape, but you can definitely hear where it's all going. You're like da 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 da. Da, 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 and then maybe I'll do something where I do something a little longer melodically, like that's a longer phrase, and you can definitely see how the shape is going, and you can kind of you follow along with it. Now here's something that's more rhythmic maybe. Now that's pretty weird.
Yeah.
But that was still a motif. It's jagged. But I think I'm being very, like, I'm trying to make the point real clear, so I'm taking an idea and really going far with it. Like I'm taking that melodic idea. Now, what were you talking about on top of that? Is it something you want to play for?
Yeah, so if you play those chords and I do like a drum solo over it, here's a version of that. Just my mouth, since there's no drums. So similarly to you, I could decide I'm gonna take that rhythm of 1, 1, 1, 2. I just take that to different places emotionally. Ta 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 ta. So that'd be like an example.
You need like a mini drum set in here.
Yeah, I got this. So that's an example of just taking an intellectual kind of mathematical idea of like 1, 1, 2, and just modulating it all over the place, and just letting that be your benchmark for something, and then almost saying like I can't really stray from that very much, but emotionally I'm gonna take that through all the emotions and all the dynamics, and really try to make that angry, make that conversational, make that soft, make it loud.
Yeah, so the dynamics is what really made that.
Yeah, so I was like speaking with my heart through something that didn't really have much heart. It was just a cool
mathematical equation.
Yeah, and in the same way, you can sort of you can do that with any part of it. You can do it with the rhythmic part. You can do it with the melodic part. You can limit yourself to a couple notes. For example, like I'm not what you'd consider an improvisational guitar player, but like if I limited myself to 3 notes and he played those chords again, that's like me kind of doing an improvisation within my skill set, let's say. You know, it's almost like saying like, okay, I'm not a painter, but I have a huge canvas, a paintbrush, and just the color red. What am I going to do that's legit? You know, like, if you're not a painter, you wouldn't go up and try to recreate the Mona Lisa. It's like you probably think, like, well, you know what, I'm just going to draw like one cool red line and make it feel like awesome, and then just leave it at that. So here's an example of me choosing 3 notes over this chord progression. Exploring 3 notes and just going like, what can I do? And then you start to understand what those notes are saying emotionally over which chord, and start to build a vocabulary just around a few words.
It's like going into a pool in the steps. Just put your toes in, try to feel it out.
Okay,
that works cool.
Yeah.
And then you like expand from there.
Yeah. And so what happens is like that's how improvisation can become composition. Is really through motif building, because that's when you start to say like, wow, I've just created a melody. Do I want to come back to that melody later? You know, like if I played those chords, let's go back to the blues thing.
Yep.
And just challenge you to kind of write a song on the spot.
Okay.
You know, pick a melody you like, pick a different one you like, and come back to the original one. You know, like.
So like just to be clear, so I don't mess up this whole thing. Am I doing like do you want me to come up with a chorus and then like go around that, or not looking into song structure?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like this is like, I'm putting them on the spot here, but just songwriting on the fly.
Okay.
And you don't have to find it right away. Just whatever you find something.
Well, you go around one. She's my baby. She's my lady. Did a lady or baby? Lady.
So there's a bad song written in 2 seconds. We were just talking about building like.
Well, there was a lot of motif building there. And then shifted the rhythm. So shift. Back to it again. Then you have the reason the whole thing existed. She's my lady. Or my baby.
Totally. And what you like, as silly as that is, and maybe hilariously not great.
What's an example of right?
What's happening though is, like you said, you took the same thing, shifted it a rhythm, came back to it, but you're using a really popular, but common sort of tool in songwriting, which is to, do the same melody twice, but give it a new context, which is a new chord. So. Same melody, different chord, different feeling, and then sum it up.
Yeah.
She's my lady.
She's my lady, y'all.
So that kind of takes us to from improvisation to sort of the doorway to composition. And we'll stop there and kind of jump back into songwriting.
That's a whole podcast
on a future podcast. Yeah, it's a whole world. But hopefully that gives you some kind of insight into sort of the different layers of improvisation and how it can kind of relate to composition and taste and context and all that stuff. And I might as well acknowledge that that fern has been between 2 guys.
Between 2 ferns, man.
We are amongst 1 fern. Thanks for listening, watching, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Broken City Artist Podcast.
This was a fun one. I hope you get something out of it.
Yeah, leave some comments if you have any questions, or whatever.
Yeah, and just keep things simple first. Always start simple and then build from there.
Yeah.
'Cause that's how you learn and that's how you progress. It's like, don't try to jump into the deep end right off the bat. Just take little ideas and then move from there.
Express yourself.
Exactly.
Try to expand
Be your
away
own human.
from licks and into self-expression and having that conversation, whether it's schizophrenically with yourself or you're interacting with and having a conversation with somebody, because you don't want, hey, what's up?
It was a
You don't want that.
no parrots.
Yeah. Unless it's I love you.
Well, let's go out with a little music, and I'll drop my pick. So I'm gonna use my fingers, it's finger style right here. So you just give me my landscape.
Oh man, let me bring it out. Let me give you a new key center.
Can't wait. Time was a magazine right there. On my end, of course. Hills of
Couple of dorks.
Yeah. Peace
Pickering
out.
third.
Ooh.
Oh, talk to me in hushed tones.
Ooh, that's the wrong note. Ah.
Ringing sound, poison rain, don't come around here again. I will cover you, you will feel no pain. Wait for the blue sky again. Did it for the money.